into politics now, and our national reporter Charlie Peters has brought us an exclusive interview with the Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch.
Yes, they spoke about the grooming gang scandal that's horrified so many people, and here's what she had to say.
I'm not afraid to look into this. I don't care what people call me, whether they say I'm jumping on a far-right bandwagon or I'm just doing it for politics. This is something that I've been talking about for a while. I said it in my big leadership speech. This was something I wanted to look at. But if you look at it, there is a systematic pattern of behaviour, not even just from one country, but from sub-communities within those countries, people with a particular background, particular class background, work background.
What background is that?
You know, people very, very poor, sort of peasant background, very, very rural. This is about those victims who deserve justice, the survivors who deserve justice.
Well, Charlie is here this morning to talk about Kemi Badenoch and what she's had to say. And what effect would her contribution to all of this be? I mean, is it likely to carry any weight?
Well, I think the significance, first and foremost, that she's met with survivors, which is on the back of what we had that interview with, and meeting with people from Oldham and Rotherham, two towns where there have been local reports. So she said that meeting was quite shocking. That's the first thing we wanted to talk about, was what did they tell you? What have you learnt as a consequence of meeting them? And I think for a lot of these politicians, they read about these reports, they see sentencing remarks from the courts, etc. But it doesn't really hit home until you meet these people. Precisely.
You see the emotion involved in all of this, and you still see the hurt that these people have to live with.
And right after our interview, the team all around Kemi, they said, we're not letting this one go. We're going to keep pursuing this one. And I do think that when you do meet survivors, it's hard to let this one go, as it were, because the extent of this scandal is so shocking, not just the abuse, but as Kemi referred to in the interview, the leader opposition there, she said it's not just the culture of the perpetrators, but also the culture of silence and cover-ups in our institutions that concerns her so greatly. There was also a section where she referred to the other sort of taboos that she's tackling, issues with men, she says, in women's prisons. She referred to them in the interview as fully intact men. She also spoke about autistic gay children being sterilised under the cover of trans, talking about the Tavistock Centre in North London, the gender medical centre. So clearly not shying away from difficult topics in that language. But to tie it into this conversation, that did surprise me. To compare those issues when I think a lot of people in this area, they just think, let's just focus on this issue of child abuse and this exploitation.
What did you make about her comments on the perpetrators of these grooming gangs? She described them as peasants from sub-communities within some countries.
Yeah, some countries, I can only assume she's referring to South Asia, because I pressed her, what backgrounds are you referring to? I didn't expect her to say peasants. I thought she'd say, as many politicians who are clear-eyed about this crisis say, oh, this is a predominantly Pakistani issue, other ethnicities are represented, but Pakistanis and other South Asians are overrepresented. But she's gone, without saying Pakistanis, I think even more precisely than that, because she's referring to sub-communities, regions of this area, not just saying, she's in some way being more precise and nervous to tarnish communities with the same brush by saying that it's not all people from this country, all people from this area. It's a specific part which generates potentially a degree of clannishness, protection among communities. People don't want to dob in their cousins. If an abuser is on the streets and their cousin is in the police, they may support each other, as we think happened in Rotherham. So, a pretty interesting line for sure.
And you also challenged her on why she and the Conservatives didn't call for that wide-ranging public inquiry whilst they were in power, because it's all well and good saying it now, but you've had 14 years to do so.
Yeah, and it came off the back of one of her councillors in Bolton, the leader of Bolton Council, Martin Cox, saying that it was shameful for the Conservative Party, her party, that they had not done so. Her position was, I've been speaking about this problem for years, she said. She was aware of the grooming gangs crisis. She mentioned it in her leadership pitch to the Conservative Party a few months ago. But she said that she wanted to wait for the inquiries that were ongoing to conclude. But the ICSA inquiry did conclude in 2022, and it showed that it hadn't looked at the grooming gang situation properly. However, Kemi Badenoch did say that they launched the Grooming Gangs Task Force on the back of that review, which, as she pointed out last night, did make 550 arrests and did protect 4,000 victims.
Charlie, what she has done, I think, is put words in the mouth of ordinary people about this. I think she's just hit bullseye on this one, because that is what people think. People think this is disgraceful that this went on, that it was allowed to go on, and something must be done to recognise for the victims that this went on. Why did it go on? Why were these officials saying, oh, let's not bother about this, oh, she's deluded this one, or forget this? No real interest in putting this right.
Yes, and there was a section of that. What led to that culture of silence? What led to that cover-up? People being ignored, children in the most appalling situations just being sidelined, which was a question I had specifically about the Islamophobia definition, which has been brought into a number of councils where this abuse went on. Now, under this definition, referring to sex grooming gangs, Asian grooming gangs, is considered racist. Now, this definition was signed off by a number of senior Labour figures, including Wes Streeting, one of the Health Secretary, and it's been adopted in councils such as Newcastle, where a ginormous police operation found hundreds of girls in an appalling state, dozens of perpetrators arrested, but under that definition, calling it out for what it was, Asian gangs, many think that's too generous, South Asian, specifically Pakistani gangs, operating, is a big problem. And she said that, in this country we don't have Islamophobia rules preventing speech, or at least we shouldn't, and in the Conservative Party they would push past that and ensure that they can accurately diagnose a situation.
Did she tell you any more about her push for a new national inquiry? Because that amendment failed, didn't it, from the Tories last week. Are they going to try again?
Well, she put out an olive branch last night to all politicians from all parties and said, I think there was some quite extensive criticism, not just from politicians, but also campaigners, against that wrecking amendment last week, because it made it very difficult for other politicians to support the call for an inquiry, because it would block a government bill. But last night she said, let's get all together and do this. All members of all parties. This is a national problem. This shouldn't be party political. And she also said that people should look towards the examples set by Labour MPs, such as Sarah Champion and Paul Waugh, Rochdale and Rotherham, but also Dan Carden, Liverpool Walton MP, who broke ranks on Saturday evening. That's a very safe Labour seat. I think probably one of the safest Labour seats. So it was significant that he made that move. Kemi Badenoch clearly now thinks there is an opportunity for all parties to come together, look beyond the politics and find a way of achieving this. But on that, I did ask, do you think that one of the reasons why it's being resisted is a fear that cover-ups would be exposed and this would implicate some politicians? She said, well, that just needs to be looked at.
Okay.
Yeah, there has to be a reason for something. I just keep coming back to this, and I think who in their right mind would want to block any investigation, would want to block any inquiry, would want to block bringing justice for the girls involved in all of this? And, we talk about grooming. We really should be referred to it as rape gangs, because that's what it was. And it just needs to be put right. And to all the people, the officials who didn't take action on this, it's just truly appalling. And I find it ridiculous that a political party keeps coming up with an excuse, oh, we don't really want to go into that, we don't want to go into that. Why not?
It's a tough one for them to argue now. I think increasingly difficult. And I think the most significant intervention since this debate started, since the inquiry was voted down last week, is that of Sarah Champion. Yesterday, that Rotherham MP, not just saying we need an inquiry, but showing, frankly, her expertise on this issue, being the representative from that area, in calling also for a commission to assess the motivation for the crimes, because we know about what happened, but we don't really know why it happened. There's never been, Eamon and Ellie, any academic or government-led research which assesses why these gangs come together, why certain backgrounds are overrepresented. Is this a cultural, religious, ethnic issue? Why is it happening? It's embarrassing. It shames us as a country that we've never looked into this properly on an academic level.
We should really all just sort of think what is really involved here. And you've got a group of men who talk to each other, and their families probably know things go on and they turn a blind eye.
Absolutely.
But these men take themselves on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 o'clock, they go to the gym, they wait for the girls coming out of school, or they sit in the back of a newsagent offering them crisps and lemonade. I mean, that's what you're talking, abusing children. And we could go into more detail, but no one actually sits and says she was 9 years of age when this happened, and then talk in detail what actually physically happened. And I think it would just make most people throw up. And I think no punishment is strong enough for the men who did this, think they can do it, think they can do it again. It still goes on.
It still goes on.
And a lot of these men are still in this country and they shouldn't be.
And on that point on deportation, we also asked her last night, will you support new measures? And she said we'll do whatever it takes to ensure that foreign nationals involved in these gangs are deported.